Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. Bloomington Mayor John Hamilton reported 3 new positive COVID-19 cases among city employees at the April 2nd COVID-19 press conference. Monroe County Health Administrator Penny Caudle addressed the spike in positive cases.
The county has seen an increase in cases per 100,000. We reached 128 per 100,000 this week on the metrics map. A month ago, we had dropped down to 63 per 100,000, and we had a single day where, when we calculated it, we were as low as 49 per 100,000. So we are definitely seeing an increase. When we look at February 3rd, just to kind of put things in perspective, on February 3rd, we had 171 cases per 100,000. On March 3rd, we had 63. And on March 31st, we were back up to 128.
Caudle said the Optum Serve and Morton Street COVID-19 testing sites will remain open despite an increased number of vaccinations. The Bloomington Plan Commission continued their discussion regarding residential 4 zoning districts in the Unified Development Ordinance. At the April 5th meeting, commissioners debated possible amendments to the zoning map. Development Services Manager Jackie Scanlon presented the First Amendment, which included an R4 rezone.
The First Amendment is actually proposed by staff. When we went live with the new map, we had one member of the public through a neighborhood association meeting indicate that a PUD, which he is the sole owner of, though the PUD calls for uses and dimensions that fit the R4 zoning district, that he was actually no longer interested in developing it in the way that was approved by council. So again, when we tried to recommend zoning districts for the PUDs, we looked at all the characteristics that we could of existing and surrounding areas and tried to look at the uses as well so that the property owners could get the zoning district that most closely is related to their district. So that is up here, and we are proposing to rezone that to R3.
Commissioner Brad Whistler introduced Amendment 2, changing a mixed-use residential zone to mixed-use healthcare. Amendment 3, proposed by Commissioner Susan Sandberg, would have removed the R4 district entirely. She explained that Amendment 3 was supposed to slow down the implementation of R4 districts.
To make it clear, Amendment number 3 was meant to be a companion piece to an earlier attempt with the removal of duplexes in R1, R2, R3 to take a pause. That was meant to table the discussion on duplexes in established neighborhoods, core neighborhoods, in order to do a more precise pinpointing of where some of the density actually could be placed that would do no harm to the core neighborhoods. And since that was defeated, I choose not to introduce this amendment tonight.
Sandberg decided not to introduce the amendment. However, she did introduce one amendment with concern for R4 district infrastructure and historical qualifications.
There were several photographs of areas along South Grant, Wilson, South Palmer that were quite illustrative of some of the vulnerable infrastructure in that area. And also noted that this particular neighborhood, this is in Bryant Park, it cannot be deemed historic. It cannot be designated very readily because of the amount of rentals already in this neighborhood. And so once again, this would be a discussion on possibly protecting some of the areas along this particular portion in Bryant Park.
The Plan Commission failed to second this amendment. Commission members approved the zoning map ordinance as amended on a 7-1 vote, with Sandberg dissenting. The package must still obtain approval from the Bloomington City Council before implementation. The Bloomington Redevelopment Commission approved an addendum to a contract with F.C. Tucker Commercial. During their April 5th meeting, Director of Economic and Sustainable Development Alex Crowley said F.C. Tucker performed land acquisitions for the city of Bloomington.
we are updating through this resolution the term of the services that they'll provide to include this upcoming term. And then also we are adding a listing agreement with them to help us list the commercial space at the 4th Street Garage.
Commissioner Dave Walter questioned Crowley on FC Tucker's usefulness on city projects. Crowley said FC Tucker held better knowledge of the market.
Really helpful to have someone out there who really understands what's going on in the market, has some view of it, has the ability to help us size offers, to work through the details of those. The RDC has not been on a huge acquisition spree. So it's not really a volume game as much as a quality game. And we feel like we're getting very good performance from FC Tucker.
The next Bloomington Redevelopment Commission meeting will be on April 19th. The Monroe County Board of Health discussed changes to COVID-19 regulations at their April 6th meeting. Monroe County Health Administrator Penny Caudill recommended university communal living return to 90% capacity in the fall. Board member Carol Tolukian requested that houses apply for an exception.
I would rather see it. I don't have any problem with it if they actually really are 100% vaccinated, expanding to 90%. But I would like to see it as that they need to apply for an exemption from the 75% rule as opposed to making it a standard.
The Board of Health approved the motion as amended. Caudill said regulations would last until May 28 unless extended or rescinded. And we will have more CATSweek after this message.
Let's talk about sex.
What is consent?
And what's not?
Consent is based on choice.
Consent is active, not passive.
Consent is giving permission without feeling pressure.
What is not consent?
Silence.
Passed out.
Intoxicated.
Fear.
Is
It is not consent.
God consent?
Ask.
Sex without consent is a crime. Only yes means yes.
Welcome back to CATSweek. The Monroe County Board of Zoning Appeals discussed a buildable area variance for property on Hinkle Road. Planner Drew Myers said the petitioner requested to make renovations to their home near Griffey Lake.
The petitioner is requesting 2 design standards variances with the purpose of restoring/renovating the existing approximately 656 square foot single family residence. They plan to expand its footprint by 81 square feet, and as well as construct a new elevated deck onto the attached to the structure.
Myers said the home was not in livable condition for all seasons. He said proof of compliance with state and Monroe County requirements for domestic water supply and on-site sewage disposal would be required from the petitioner.
The last one is in respect to conversations I've had with the petitioners regarding the need to have a water line run to the home site, as well as figuring out what they're going to be doing with regards to septic and those sorts of things.
Petitioner Dimitri Vitsa said the construction would include replacement of an existing septic system. Community member Richard Martin said the home would cause a visual intrusion from the lakefront. He claimed no structural reforms were needed to make the home livable.
There has been somebody living there for over 40 years. Certainly the property can be repaired and continue in use in its present form. It does not need to be expanded. It doesn't need to have a 28 by 16 foot deck put on the front of it to be used. The only practical difficulties here are those that are being presented by the petitioner because they want to expand the property.
Petitioner Antonia Curry said the current resident experienced wild animals finding their way into the home and that the home would not be functional for a family or renters.
The property really can't be repaired. It was built by possibly Richard was part of the building crew. My parents about 50 years ago, and a whole bunch of their hippie friends and probably a whole bunch of beer. And they built it out of reused things. My mom is actually here, so she could probably speak more clearly to the structural integrity of the cabin, but it really truly is one step up from camping. The man that lives there now, Alan, there's literally snakes that live inside the building. He's coexists with the animals. They live inside the building. So beside the fact that structurally it was not built to withstand 50 years of use, it's been in a state of coexistence with nature for maybe the past 20 years. So it is truly not functionally able to be renewed.
Curry said that the trees would not be cleared for a lake view. Board members unanimously approved the variances with conditions. The Bloomington City Council discussed a redevelopment of the warehouse near Switchyard Park. At the April 7th meeting, Councilmember Matt Flaherty introduced an ordinance which would allow redevelopment of the warehouse at 300 West Hillside Drive. Architect Doug Bruce said the land near Switchyard Park is perfect for this kind of housing development.
This is the type of development that we need. This is certainly not set up to be student housing. This is set up in a place where people can walk to work, families can live next to the park. And again, it's not sprawl. It's taking a site that's underutilized and again needs to meeting that housing study. We need more density in our city. And there isn't a better place to put that kind of housing in a project than next to one of the largest transportation spines that we have running through our city, which is the Beeline Trail.
Attorney for Storage Express, Michael McBride, said a third of the property belongs to Storage Express. He brought up concerns around the safety of demolishing only a portion of the warehouse.
My client was the general contractor for the build out for his building, and he has legitimate concerns with that knowledge about the feasibility of demolishing 2/3 of this building and leaving the remaining 1/3. Based on the structure of the walls, potentials for shared utilities, pipes, electricity, and we have not seen any structural engineer report at this point showing exactly what would be done. Now it would seem if we're basing on having a structure that is going to demolish, 2/3 of the building and having these 7 additional buildings built, now would seem to be the time to make sure this can be done.
Resident Elizabeth Cox Ash expressed worry that a future property owner would not support affordable housing. Councilmember Isabel Piedmont Smith clarified that affordable housing is required under the ordinance.
I do want to emphasize that Ms. Cox Ash said that we think we're getting affordable housing, but maybe we won't. Actually, we are requiring that there be affordable housing as a part of this petition, and that will be a requirement regardless of who owns the property in the future if Mr. Brennan would decide to sell it.
The City Council voted unanimously to adopt the ordinance. The Monroe County Board of Commissioners discussed funding for Monroe County's Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative. In the April 7th meeting, Coordinator Christine McAfee talked about how JDAI has changed over the years.
It started as a detention initiative to keep kids out of detention, the unnecessary use, but they've really expanded it now, and we have a very strong race equity component. We have a very strong, very, very strong data component. We're looking at alternatives to detention, so it's not just, as they like to tell us, it's not just a jailbreak, but it's finding programming to keep kids out of these centers, but also get them back on the right path.
McAfee shared examples of JDAI's focus on youth and family engagement. She highlighted programs to keep kids engaged in other activities.
We also have funds that are going to be available to pay for pro-social activities. We can buy memberships at clubs. We can pay camp fees. We can pay for sporting equipment or sporting fees. When I was growing up, my mom used to tell me busy hands were happy hands. And I think I like that mantra for my family as well. But we all know that these activities can be really, really expensive. And so again, we have grant funds to support youth and families in finding activities that they can participate in that will be able to help support.
The commissioners unanimously approved the grant funding. And we'll have more CATSweek after this message.
For hurting families in Monroe County.
A contribution to children.
who are vulnerable and in need of an advocate.
A staff that goes above and beyond to support and advocate for children in need of services.
The web of remarkable people who are dealing with difficult situations.
So many young people that are in need of help and trying to find a stable family, a stable place to live. Without the CASAs to make that happen, many of them would be unable to find a good home.
I love being that voice for the child who can't speak for themselves in court.
It takes me out of my comfort zone, and it also helps others.
CASA means supporting our community.
Being a CASA is making sure that your village is healthy and whole, and that the children in your village will someday be able to help the village as well.
A child who doesn't have a voice, maybe in their family situation or a school situation, now has a voice that can advocate for them.
I really enjoy working with children that are going through difficult times and letting them know that I care about their future.
We are privileged with our charge of representing the best interest of children. And so therefore we can advocate for exactly what they need without restriction, focusing on their best interest.
I want to repair the world one child at a time.
Welcome back to CATSweek. The Monroe County Solid Waste Management District considered an employee COVID-19 vaccine benefit. Board member Isabel Piedmont-Smith proposed the resolution during their April 8th meeting.
Whereas the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District is a political subdivision and a solid waste managed district under Indiana Code. Whereas, I think there's a pronoun missing here, whereas it recognizes the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on its employees and the community at large. Whereas safe and effective vaccines are now available to help protect against COVID-19. Whereas effective March 31st, 2021, the state of Indiana provides that all Indiana residents 16 years of age and older are eligible to receive the vaccine. Whereas the district recognizes the benefits of its employees being vaccinated against COVID-19. And whereas the district wishes to provide an incentive to its employees to encourage them to receive the vaccine.
Piedmont-Smith said employees who proved their vaccination status would receive $100. Tom McGlasson said the program was modeled after the one in use at the city of Bloomington. Board member Penny Githens asked Bloomington Mayor John Hamilton about employee interest.
Yeah, I'd like to know from the mayor what percentage of the city employees have taken advantage of this.
Sure. The latest information I have is that about 130 people have completed their vaccination courses. They have to provide the full evidence of 2 weeks after the last vaccination they need, and about 130. So that's out of about 800 or so. I can't do the math in my head, but less than 20% so far. And I really appreciate the consideration of this. I do think it's really appropriate to, we're going to be working really hard to try to get as many people as we can to be vaccinated to deal with the pandemic. And it is absolutely good for our employees, and it's good for our community and our colleagues, the more people who get vaccinated.
Hamilton said their insurance provider covered half of the city benefit. Board members unanimously approved the benefit. Piedmont-Smith said employees must provide proof before October 1st. The Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission discussed proposed changes to a house in the Elm Heights Historic District. Historic Preservation Program Manager Connor Hederick introduced the changes at the April 8th meeting.
So this is 1215 East Hunter Avenue. It's located in the Elm Heights Local Historic District. It's a contributing front gable style bungalow built circa 1920. The request is for construction of additions to the side and rear of the house. So we'll look at those real quick. I believe this carport here is going to be removed, and then there's going to be addition to the side here, out this way towards this alley. And then there's going to be an addition on the rear here, which you can see on the plan. So we have about a 12 by 12 foot bedroom, going to the north towards the alley. And then we have this approximately 36, 37-foot addition going to the east.
Commissioner Sam DeSoler said that the construction would make changes to the street-facing elevation. He questioned architect Steve Miller about the lack of depictions of the south elevation.
So my understanding is this house sits on the north side of Hunter Street. So do we have an elevation, a south elevation of the property? We don't have anything that I can see that faces the street in our package.
Steve? You just showed the photograph of it. That's what it looks like.
That's the north elevation. I am asking about the south elevation, which shows the front of the house. The north elevation should show the rear of the house. Is that true?
Yes.
So I don't have a south elevation in my packet.
Well, that's the existing, when you looked at the photograph from that you just showed, that is the front elevation. We're not changing that at all.
The Historic Preservation Commission tabled the discussion until a future meeting. And that is all for CATSweek. Thank you for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.
you.